This is Seven Seas Cruising Association Best Practices, Communication Strategies with Predict Wind Data Hub. This is being presented by Luis Soltero. The program will start in 5 minutes. This is Seven Seas Cruising Association Best Practices, Communication Strategies with Predict Wind Data Hub. The presentation will start in 3 minutes. This is Seven Seas. The presentation will start at 7 o'clock with Luis Soltero presenting the Predict Wind Data Hub. And we have, we'll be starting this in just a minute. Sue raised a hand. And I'll see if I can tell what she needs. This is Seven Seas Cruising Association, Best Practices, Communication Strategies with Predict Wind Data Hub. It's presented by Luis Soltero, who you see on the screen to your right. He's a senior software engineer developer. He shares his ideas and development tools, and he developed a new tool, the Predict Wind Data Hub, which he uses with the PredictWind services. This webinar is focused on cruisers who need integration support of different data streams from differing onboard systems, conversion of data types, as well as storage and reuse of collected data to onboard and remote systems. The bottom of the screen, you'll see the location of predictwind.com and for the data hub. We have Seven Seas Cruising Association has the YouTube site. We are live streaming to YouTube, and you'll be able to find the slides or the presentation afterwards on that site. I'm going to drop this share and turn it over to Louis now.
Okay, let's see. I'm going to try to find the share button here. Screen share, all right. All right.
And while he's doing that, if you have questions, you can either use the chat or Q&A. And the Q&A will be answered at the very last of the presentation. And if you have questions, I see Sue raised her hand. I need to see what Sue wanted. You know what I'm going to do? Sue, I'm going to let you talk. Did you have a problem, or is there something we can help you with before we get started? Gone. I guess we'll just let Sue, she can ask. If someone wants to be recognized and talk, we will also allow that during Q&A. But I'm going to turn this over now to Louis and data strategies with PredictWind Data Hub.
Hello, everyone. My name is Louis Soltero. I am the lead developer of the PredictWind Data Hub. This is seminar number 2 of a 3-part series. The first one was held last week, and it was on cruising the ICW safely with Aquamaps and Data Hub. This one is on the PredictWind Data Hub, and we'll take a deep dive into the Data Hub. And then the following one, the one next week, next Thursday at this time, will be on Starlink, Iridium, LTE, Data Hub, and communication strategies with satellite while nearshore and offshore. If you haven't seen the first seminar, if you missed the first seminar, then I recommend that you go take a listen. There is a thread of commonality between all 3 of these presentations, which is the Data Hub. And so we talk about different features and different presentations. We'll discuss most of them here, but there are some features that are discussed in the other presentations that are not a focus of this particular one. So with that, I will dive in. So this is the presentation overview for today's presentation. We'll be introducing the PredictWind Data Hub, which many of you may not be familiar with. One interesting thing is many of you do know PredictWind. PredictWind is a weather company, or has been historically, and they offer a number of different services. Amazingly enough, we're going to be spending this talk talking about the Data Hub, which is a piece of hardware that PredictWind sells, and PredictWind services that are not related to weather. So you may find that interesting. I kind of do, given that I have a long history with PredictWind, and I've always known them as a weather company, but they do a lot more than weather. So this presentation is about the PredictWind Data Hub and the services that the PredictWind Data Hub enables for you. And so the presentation summary is on this slide, and we'll talk about the intro. We'll talk about vessel tracking with the Data Hub. We'll talk about NMEA repeater and navigation. We'll talk about the AIS repeater. We'll talk about a new feature called Over the Horizon AIS. We'll discuss weather routing, remote access, and then we'll tie it all together with a Q&A at the very end. So what I'd like to do now is I would like to present a small video. It's only 3 minutes long. This is on the PredictWind Hub webpage at predictwind.com, but this will give us an overview and a place to spring forward from. So Joan, we didn't test the speaker here, so if there's any issue with the sound, let me know, and then I can adjust things, but here we go.
The Data Hub by PredictWind is a GPS tracker packed full of powerful data and communications features. Reliable and accurate GPS tracking is essential for a safe passage offshore. The Data Hub uses a high-quality built-in GPS to pinpoint your location anywhere in the world. Back home, friends and family can watch your progress on your personalized GPS tracking page. In a world first, they can now see your live wind conditions and boat speed, along with your GPS track, blog posts, and photos. AI pollers track your boat's real-time data to learn the way you sail your boat. This is combined with a hydrodynamic model of your unique boat shape and the wave forecast to create the world's most accurate pollers and weather routing. The Anchor Alert app allows you to monitor your boat's GPS location and real-time changes in wind speed, direction, depth, and other N2K data. Then get alerts on board or ashore if conditions change or become unsafe. Guard your boat's internet connection with our secure firewall. This blocks unwanted traffic and eliminates the risk of runaway airtime bills. Broadcast GPS, N2K, and AIS data over Wi-Fi, so navigation apps can benefit from your boat's instrumentation data. This will allow apps like Navionics to use highly accurate GPS to safely navigate through narrow passages. PredictChat offers optimized WhatsApp and SMS messaging for offshore at a fraction of the normal data usage. PredictMail allows you to use your existing email app while offshore. Go from a mobile data connection in town to an offshore connection, and your email will automatically be compressed to minimize your data usage. Broadcast Wi-Fi from a mobile or satellite internet connection to all your other devices on board. Collect and upload AIS data from all your surrounding vessels to the global AIS network, improving safety for all vessels on the ocean. The Data Hub will automatically switch to your backup connection if your primary internet goes down, so you're always connected. Log data from your boat's instrumentation for analysis or evidence in the event of an insurance claim. Use popular navigation apps to control your autopilot with the Data Hub N2K interface. Remote access allows support personnel to log in remotely and troubleshoot issues with your boat's N2K network. Keep your boat safe and connected while offshore with the Data Hub by PredictWind.
All right, so basically the Data Hub is a small appliance that installs on your vessel's NMEA 2000 instrumentation network, and then takes that data and sends it off to PredictWind, the cloud at PredictWind. PredictWind processes that data and then offers services specific to your vessel. And we went over some of those in the video, but we'll be discussing more of those in detail. So in order to use the Data Hub, you need to connect it to your vessel's instrumentation, but you also need to connect it to the internet. And the Data Hub is very versatile on how it connects to the internet. You can connect to the internet via Wi-Fi or Ethernet tethering to an onboard router that has access to the internet. You can Wi-Fi or Ethernet tether to a Starlink satellite terminal. You can Wi-Fi or Ethernet tether to an Iridium Go or a Go exec. And you can also plug in, you can either Wi-Fi or USB tether to an Android or iOS phone plugged into the USB port, for example, to get internet as well. So many different ways to get connected to the internet, and the manual for the Data Hub discusses that. And when you buy the Data Hub from PredictWind, you can buy a service called onboarding, which will allow you to spend an hour on the phone with their technicians at PredictWind, and they will help you get your Data Hub connected to your N2K network as well as tethered to the internet so that these services can be uploaded to the cloud. All right, so let's talk about the very first service, which is vessel tracking. It's probably the most popular service that the Hub offers. The Hub was originally created about 3 years ago to address this particular issue. People wanted to be able to track their vessels and have friends and family know where they are at any given time and share photos and blogs with them. Interestingly, the vessel tracking service has been a part of PredictWind for many, many years, but prior to the data hub, that service was only available via satellite. So you had to have an Iridium Go or an Iridium InReach or some form of communicating over a satellite network to get position reports into the vessel tracking. And so the data hub was created to allow users access to the vessel tracking without necessarily having to have a satellite system on board. The data hub has a built-in GPS, or it can use the vessel's NMEA 2000 network for position information. It collects position, time, instrumentation, data, and posts to personal tracking page at HTTP and then tracking.predictwind.com/vessel name. And so, for example, my tracking page is tracking.predictwind.com/MV_Bliss, the name of my boat. And one thing that I should note is that since we're collecting vessel instrumentation, every vessel is a weather station. So when positions are posted on the website, current wind conditions are also posted. So that's very useful for people traveling around in a specific area like the Bahamas. They can look at the tracking pages of their different friends and know what the wind is doing at those locations. It uses any available internet or satellite connectivity to upload the data. If there is no internet connectivity at the time the position information is collected, it's just stored and on an internal SD card for later upload to the internet. So let's say, for example, you're going to cross the Atlantic Ocean and you don't have a satellite on board, but you have a PredictWind data hub. You can track your position reports across the entire Atlantic Ocean. And when you get over to Ireland and you connect to the internet, then all those position reports will be uploaded to your specific website. So not real time if you don't have a satellite link, but still very useful since your track will be recorded whether you're connected to the internet or not. So it allows offshore tracking via Starlink or Iridium Go Exec. The Iridium Go Exec has no tracking in it. So if you want to use your Iridium Go Exec for real-time tracking while you're doing an ocean passage, then you will be required to have a data hub. Optionally, along with the tracking reports, once the connection is open, you can configure the data hub to upload the vessel's data polars for computations used in departure and route planning. And we will talk in detail about that later on in this presentation. And if you subscribe to the email service in the Predict chat service, again, that information can be sent along with position reports as well. So let's take a look at what this might look like. So this right here, this particular page is my boat's tracking page. And so this is where we've been in the last year. At the time this screenshot was done, we were sitting in Annapolis, Maryland, which is where the red dot is. So your track is recorded every 15 minutes or so for your entire trip. And every once in a while, we post a blog post, and the white dots that you see on the line correspond to a location of a blog post. If a user comes along and clicks on the white dots, then the blog for that specific location pops up. The blogs are also listed in reverse chronological order on the right-hand side, and you can click on them. If you look down at the bottom of the screen at Conception Island, at Shroud Key, that was actually where the concept of the data hub was born. We were at anchor in Shroud Key enjoying our cruise in the Bahamas in 2020, and had a friend come over, and we decided to share tracking information. And he told me that he didn't have his active currently because he didn't want to pay the $150 a month for his Iridium Go to be active in order to do tracking. And then he asked me if there was any way that we could do this over LTE connection, because the Bahamas has very good cell phone coverage, and a belt went off. And that's the idea that basically created the data hub. Since then, of course, the data hub has expanded to include many, many more services. But down there in the bottom of the screen is where the Data Hub was conceived. So there's the a blog post. So you in the blog post you have text, and you also have pictures. So that's me in my dinghy sitting around in Shroud Key, February of 2021. So not only can PredictWind host tracking pages for specific individuals, but they also frequently do it for rallies. This particular page that we're looking at here is the Nordhaven Cruisers group. And so all of these are Nordhaven vessels that basically want to know where they are. And so if you're in an organization or you have a rally or you want to have a group of people that want to basically move as a group or be associated, you can contact PredictWind and they can easily put together a rally page or a fleet page for your specific fleet. Let's discuss the NMEA repeater. The NMEA repeater is very important and very critical service that is provided by the Data Hub. It reads instrumentation off of the NMEA 2000 network or its internal GPS, and it broadcasts it via Wi-Fi to navigation apps on the vessel or on shore. So if you have an iPad, for example, and you're using Aquamaps, and you might want to, or Navionics or some charting program, or if you have a PC using OpenCPN, for example, and you want the vessel instrumentation to be fed into that iPad or that computer, then this is the way to do it. So and the NMEA 2000 network is a wired network. It uses a proprietary protocol. And so it's difficult to get that information in a format that can be consumed by a tablet. And so what the Data Hub does is it reads that instrumentation in N2K format, converts it into NMEA 183 format, which is a very known and open protocol that is understood by all navigation programs, and then it broadcasts that information over Wi-Fi so that you can use it in your nav apps. And last week, when we talked about cruising up and down the ICW safely, we spent a lot of time discussing the NMEA repeater and its asset interfaces into Aquamaps. In addition to sending vessel instrumentation, it also can read the AIS information from your AIS receiver and transmit that to apps on the vessel. So Aquamap or Navionics or OpenCPN, for example, can display AIS targets just like your MFD can. And it can also send them off to the internet and to upload to shore stations. So in addition to that, you can also control the autopilot on your vessel with apps running on the laptop or mobile devices, such as OpenCPN, Aquamaps, iNavX, and others. And so those applications will send NMEA 183 autopilot commands to the Data Hub. The Data Hub will convert those into NMEA 2000 and then feed them to the autopilot to drive your boat down a route that has been created in these nav apps. All right, so let's see what that might look like. So this is a screen capture that I did earlier today from a friend's boat, Bob Etter, sitting in Stamford, Connecticut. His boat is in the top left-hand corner of the screen. And so his NMEA 183 feed is being fed off of the N2K instrumentation that he has on his vessel. And then in this particular instance, sent over the internet to Aquamap running here on my laptop in Tennessee. And so you see, for example, on the left-hand side heading, you see that there's AIS, you see wind, you see depth. So GPS down at the bottom of the screen is full bars. So there's accurate GPS. And then on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see that we are receiving data, actively receiving NMEA 183 data from the hub. And those are the fields that we're receiving. So we're receiving GPS, depth, wind and speed and direction, heading, and AIS, both over the airwaves and via the internet, as we will discuss here in a minute. So It's an example of instrumentation being fed into your apps using the Data Hub. AIS. AIS is very important to predict wind. And as such, they have a number of different AIS products. One of them is associated or affiliated with the NMEA 183 to N2K converter. And what that does is it reads NMEA 2000 AIS targets, and then from the internal receiver on your vessel, and then it sends it off to the internet, to the aggregators, and it's shared at predictwind.com on their AIS page and many other sites. I'm not sure if you're familiar with marinetraffic.com. If you go to marinetraffic.com, that's a very popular website for tracking your friends. Basically, anybody who's got AIS will be on the Marine Traffic website, as well as at predictwind.com. And so those AIS targets are fed from satellites and AIS stations that are mostly shore-based, where AIS is received by those shore stations and then transmitted to the internet to be displayed on those websites. In the case of the PredictWind Hub, every vessel that has a PredictWind data hub that has an AIS receiver can be a mobile AIS station transmitting to Marine Traffic and all of the other aggregators on the internet. So in addition to doing that, you can actually create your own private station at Marine Traffic, and then you can have the data hub send to that station. That's really nice because as soon as you do that, Marine Traffic will elevate your account to a professional account and provide you the professional services. And so if you want to use that to send alerts, track many of your friends, then that's a really nice service that costs nothing if you have a data hub transmitting to that private station at Marine Traffic. All right, so again, the AIS data can be sent in addition to the internet to apps on the vessel or on shore, as I just demonstrated in the previous slide. So let's take a look at the AIS website at PredictWind. So this is predictwind.com. If you got a PredictWind account, you log in. You'll see on the left-hand side a tab for AIS. The entire universe of AIS targets is available there. Now, unlike Marine Traffic, where you can only see terrestrial targets, and I mean, you can see the satellite targets at Marine Traffic, but they won't give you any information about the targets that are acquired by our satellite. The AIS data that is displayed at PredictWind has all the targets in them, whether they're acquired via shore stations, mobile stations, or via satellite. And so you can put in your MMSI number in there and find a specific vessel. This is an example of us in Annapolis in Spa Creek, where we did a search for our MMSI or our vessel name, and then that will find us on that particular website. So I just want to make you aware that this AIS page exists and that it's very useful, in many respects more useful than the one at Marine Traffic, just because there are more AIS targets available on this website than there are at Marine Traffic, unless you pay for their high-end services. So I have to say that I love this slide. This is one that this is a screen capture that I did this morning. This slide contains all of the data hubs worldwide that are acquiring AIS targets and transmitting them to the internet. And so you notice that we have them all over the world. There's several targets, several data hubs sitting in the Antarctic Peninsula. We've got many in the Mediterranean, up in the United Kingdoms and the North Sea up there. And of course, it's high season in the Caribbean. And so you can see all the targets, all the data hubs in the Caribbean, Bahamas, transmitting data. And so if you buy a data hub and you turn on the service, which costs nothing, then you end up on this map. And as of this morning at 8:33 a.m., we were acquiring 3,500 vessels worldwide. So a great public service. I encourage you to participate. It costs nothing for you to do this. You just need to enable the service, and then magically your boat and all the vessels around you will show up on aggregator websites such as this one. All right, so here we are. This is an example of AIS being received on Aquamap through the NMEA repeater. And basically the targets show up as little round circles for those that are on a moored, and little triangles for those vessels that are moving. And if you click on the AIS button all the way on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see a list of all the AIS targets that have been acquired by the app through the NMEA 2000 to NMEA 183 repeater. All right, autopilot control. So this is a new feature that is available on the hub. It'll soon be available in Aquamap. It's only available in the beta version of Aquamap, but it does work with OpenCPN. And it works with any autopilot that accepts NMEA PGNs 129.283, which is the cross-track error, 129.284, which is nav info, 129.285, which is route info. And it works with any app that uses NMEA 183 RMB, XDE, and APB sentences to control the autopilot. So this is known to work with Raymarine autopilots really well. I have used this feature for many, many, many hours traveling up and down the ICW. It's really fantastic. You just open up Aquamap, draw a route down the ICW, and then just turn on the route, and your boat magically just follows that particular route. It also works with OpenCPN in Aquamap. Some autopilots do not work. We have not been able to get Garmin to work, for example, because it uses proprietary sentences. But the other autopilots should work as well. So I encourage you to take a look at this. This is a super feature that is available on the hub for no additional cost. All right, so in this slide, I basically show you how to set up the autopilot control. I'll go through the slide, but I think maybe I'll just give you a live demo because that might be simpler. But basically, you draw a route. You then you can then go to settings, and you can go ahead and enable the autopilot control. So why don't I just do that real quick, because that might be simpler than going through this busy slot, this busy screen. So right here, so right now I have Aquamaps running, and I have an NMEA 183 feed coming from Bob Etter's boat that happens to be in Stamford, Connecticut, right there in the middle of the screen. I am in Tennessee, so I'm amazed I can actually navigate his boat. I can actually create a route and turn it on, and if he were moving, I could control his boat from here. That's kind of scary, but yeah. So we have a route here. To create a route in Aquamaps is very simple. I just go ahead and click in here and say, I'm just going to delete that. You can just go ahead and create a route by just clicking on the screen on the left-hand side. There's a little bubble. If you just click on that, then you can just click and add points to create a specific route. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete those since I don't want that route. I've already got a route sitting here coming out of the channel. To enable the route, you would basically click on the waypoint, click on the small eye, right corner, come down here and click on the start button, and that would actually start you navigating down that specific route. And so right now we see that his boat is at his marina and is ready to head to waypoint number 1. Now, to set up the autopilot in Aquamap, what you would do is you would go to the small icon that I am not able to see right now at the bottom of this. So here we go. The gear icon in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. If you click on that, or you click on, so we got a bubble here. Oh, here we go. We go to the settings. If you go over here to Wi-Fi connections, and you click on settings, and then you go to your active setting that's receiving. So if I go here and I go down to the bottom of the screen, it says send output APB, RMB, and XDE. that will enable the autopilot feature. While you're here in this Wi-Fi settings, so let's go back here to Wi-Fi settings. You can add a connection by clicking on the plus here. If you click on the plus, you can give it a name, Data Hub. And then you'll notice that the Data Hub is one of the listed devices here. And at that point, voila, it's all set up and you're ready to actually receive data. So I'm just going to delete that because I don't need that. Need that connection. All right. So but anyway, so that's how you would connect Aquamaps to the Data Hub. Similar process is used for OpenCPN and other nav apps. All right, so let me just go back to my presentation. So this slide basically goes through the process that we just went through for creating a route, enabling the route, going to the Wi-Fi connection settings, adding the Data Hub as a Wi-Fi device that's sending an MEA data, and then enabling the autopilot output. Remote support. This is really a super feature that more and more people are using. But in the Data Hub, since the Data Hub has an internet connection, on the left-hand side of the menu, there's something called remote access. And you can push that button and bring up a session that will go over to the internet and then create some links that users, technical support people, or others can use to access your Data Hub. And so, for example, if you're having a problem with your Data Hub, you can contact PredictWind, and PredictWind can log in remotely and actually do some diagnosis. I have actually done this where some people have been having issues with their GPSs or whatever, and PredictWind contacts me. I can log in remotely to the router and actually do dumps, sniff the N2K network, and view the actual raw data, which, by the way, you can do as well through the NMEA repeater. There's a menu for actually capturing detailed information about your N2K logs, and then actually diagnose problems and information. So I'm just going to give a quick demonstration on how that might work. I'm going to go over here to this guy right here. So this happens to be Bob Etter's boat here in Stamford, Connecticut. And I can actually, I'm logged in, I can log into it remotely. If I got the password right here. And that will bring up, like I say, this is a connection from Tennessee to this Data Hub so that we can do maintenance on it. So if you do this, again, it's really important for you to change the passwords, make sure they're secure so that people can't break into your particular router. But in this case, Bob has set up the remote support so that it exports the NMEA 183 feed. All right, so if we go to remote access, you'll see the URLs, and but basically we're up and running. And if we go to the NMEA repeater, slowly here. By the way, this is all over a Starlink satellite link. So Bob has a Starlink satellite that's on board, that's on all the time, and so we're able to do this demonstration using his satellite link. So for example, if I come to the NMEA and I click on the GPS, I'll see basically the GPS status information. If I go to the navigation page, then it'll show me basically data that is coming off of his N2K network and being sampled by the Data Hub real time. So, so we have, there's a heading, magnetic and true, depth, apparent wind speed, apparent wind angle, true wind speed, true wind direction, speed over the water, which of course is 0 because he's in a dock, true heading through the water, etc. So anyway, so that's an example of how you might use the NMEA 183. And then again, this is a perfect example, again, of using it since we're actually have access to his NMEA 183 feed.
Louis, this is Joan.
Yes.
Yes, the chat seems to be disabled. So if people want to ask a question, use the Q&A. Like Kevin Kinports asked how to be a marine traffic station. We'll answer that at the end if you know that. And then I let Bob Etter come in and he will answer any questions if you want to ask him to do that.
Yeah, we can actually show, I can actually show you what buttons you turn on to become an AIS station.
Okay,
Right, so for now, I'll continue the presentation and we'll address those at the end. And again, so this is a open CPN, and again, this is us demonstrating how you access a remote NMEA feed so that you can display the instrumentation information on a open CPN session remotely. Again, this would be working on your boat, receiving the data over Wi-Fi, or if you've got your NMEA 183 exported like Bob has, then of course you could do it remotely as well. All right, new topic, over the horizon AIS. This is a new service, and I have to say that I'm really excited about this because PredictWind is the only company that is able to do this. And it's a fantastic service. What it is it's long distance AIS out to 300 nautical miles from your vessel's location. So traditional AIS basically allows you to receive position information, AIS information for vessels around you, typically 2 to 5 nautical miles if they're a Class B for recreational boats. And if you're tracking big, large container vessels or ships, commercial ships, then you might get 20 nautical miles for a vessel. But that's it. Your sight of those AIS targets are actually quite close to the vessels, and this happens to us all the time. You know, we might be traveling with a group of boats, and as soon as those boats get 2 to 3 miles away from us, we're no longer able to see them because Class B AIS is only really good to about 2 to 3 nautical miles. So over the horizon AIS allows us to see all the AIS targets that are around us out to 300 nautical miles. That's amazing. So AIS data is transmitted via NMEA 183 to NavApps, so you can view these targets out to 300 nautical miles in Aquamaps. Or it also displays them via the NMEA 2000 network onto your multifunction displays so that you can actually see them on your Garmin MFD. They look just like regular AIS targets, except that they're a lot further from you than your AIS receiver is able to provide. In order to use this service, you have to have an internet connection, whether that be through Starlink or an Iridium Go or to Go Exec, or some IP-based satellite connection, or an LTE cell connection. So you might be 10 miles or 15 miles offshore with an LTE cell booster, and you are able to receive this AIS data and display it real time on your instrumentation. Updates happen every minute. Terrestrial targets usually are just a minute or 2 or 3 older, late. So there's a little latency because, of course, the AIS targets have to go from the vessel to a shore station or a mobile AIS station, transmitted to the internet database at one of the aggregators, and then downloaded back onto your vessel. So there's usually a few minute lag there. For if you're out in the middle of the Pacific, or in, you know, out of the way of the place that has no shore stations, the satellite ones can take up to 30 minutes, but that's pretty rare. So if you're in the Atlantic, even the satellite acquired ones will be much, much quicker than 30 minutes. If you're out in the middle of the Pacific, then there's a chance that the targets that are coming in via satellite might be 30 minutes old. But for the most part, the targets are just a few minutes out of date. The AIS targets that are received over the internet are tagged so that they can be differentiated from over-the-air AIS. So applications like Aquamap will know the difference between targets that are acquired over the air or targets that are acquired over the internet. On an NMEA 2000 network display, for example, on your Garmin, you can always tell if a target was received over the internet because the call sign of every target that was received over the internet will be set to DataHub. The destination for Class A, targets will be set to last update, and the ETA time of that position will, the ETA for the Class A info will be set to the position time for the update of that last update of that vessel. So it's easy to tell the difference. Note that AIS that comes in over the air has priority over AIS that comes over the over the internet. So the AIS that comes in over the air from your AIS receiver is real time. Whereas AIS coming in over the internet by definition has some lag to it. And so if we see a vessel come in over the air, we really don't want to display the one that's coming in over the internet. And so the hub will take care of that. It'll differentiate between the two and always give priority for targets that come in over the air. It works exactly like regular AIS with much further range. And just know that you require a PredictWind Pro subscription in order to use this. So here's just a quick little slide from the website that shows how this works. And so basically, in that top picture, you see a standard AIS that basically has a limit of less than 20 nautical miles. And then for over the horizon, a vessel that is much further than 20 miles will send its position report. It'll be received via satellite or some shore station, transmitted to the internet, and then back to you over your internet connection. And then again, it can be displayed on your MFDs on your vessel just as well as your nav apps. All right, so here is a piece of art that I just acquired about an hour ago. I was talking to my friend Barry at PredictWind, and of course, he's got to explain over the horizon AIS to his customers and his friends, and also the support people at PredictWind. And so he was going to create a nice little fancy diagram. So he was sharing this with me, asking me if this was all okay. And I said, well, a great diagram. I think I will present that tonight in my talk, because I think it does a really good job explaining the flow of data between the data hub and the internet and the local displays for the AIS. So in the center of the screen here, you have the data hub, and it has an internet connection to, say, a cell phone router. And so you see that at the top of the screen. And so that's receiving and sending AIS data. So you have an AIS transceiver at the bottom of the screen. And so that transceiver puts NMEA data on the backbone that has AIS information on it. The data hub will then read that information, and it'll send it up through that cell phone router to the internet so that it gets collected to the aggregators. It'll also send that information over Wi-Fi to Navionics and other apps that are running, navigation apps that are running on your iPad or on your computer. For over the internet AIS or over the horizon and AIS, the data hub queries PredictWind for the entire universe of AIS targets that are on the internet, downloads those that are within 300 nautical miles from your position or the distance that you specified in the settings for the hub. It downloads those to the hub, and then the hub turns around and sends those AIS targets via Wi-Fi to apps that are running on your iPad, your or laptop, or other computers on board. It also takes that information, it puts it on the N2K backbone for display on your N2K plotters, such as your Garmin displays, your Navico displays, your Furuno displays, etc. All right, and so here's an example of Aquamaps. This one again was done remotely from a friend of mine that was in Fort Pierce. And if you look at you see the targets all from Fort Pierce out down to, well, I'm not sure where. I mean, it looks like Port St. Lucie or something. And you see Blue Star down at the bottom of the screen. You click on Blue Star, and you see that Blue Star is 45 nautical miles away from, in this case, Sea Dweller. So again, you can't really tell the difference looking at these, that they're anything other than regular AIS targets. If you do click on and get information on the particular target, like we show on the right-hand portion of the screen, you see that this is Blue Star. It's a pleasure craft, and the call sign is set to Data Hub. That's how you know that target was received over the internet. Down at the bottom of the screen, you see that it's been updated 211 seconds ago. So again, the latency is just a few minutes. All right, so that takes care of AIS. Let me just, before I do that, before I skip out of that, I'm here I am again at on Aquamaps running real time connected to Bob Etter's boat. Just notice that when I click on the Wi-Fi settings, so let me just do that real quick here. Bottom right-hand corner, there's a little gear. I can click on that. Or I can come and click on any of these little squares over here. And that brings me up to here, and I can go to Wi-Fi settings. If I actually do it from, if I do it from here, if I click on heading, for example, it takes me straight there. Down at the bottom, it says AIS data, and you'll notice that there's two different AISs. The NMEA 4.0 repeater AIS station, that's over the internet AIS. The mobile stations are the ones that are received over the airwaves. So I can actually check and uncheck these, and that will only display the data. So if I want to see data from the internet and data from my local AIS station, on my local AIS receiver, I have to have both checked. So if you're using Aquamaps to display this data, just know that you need to have both of these checked, or you're not going to see the over the horizon AIS. On other programs that don't have that don't distinguish between the two, like for example, OpenCPN or the Navionics app, they'll just show up as regular targets. And if you click on them, then so just see here, we should have some. Yeah, so here we go. So I think Bob's got his set to 50 miles. And so if you take a look down here, you see AIS targets going down up and down the East River, up in the Hudson. If you click on any of these, again, you see the call sign is set to data hub. So you know that these came in over the airwaves. And again, 88 seconds ago. So the latency is very, very minimal. All right, let's talk about weather routing. PredictWind has this really nice feature called weather routing, which allows you to calculate the optimum route through wind, current, waves, and shallow water. The feature can use AI-generated custom polars specific to your sailboat. This is where the hub comes in. In order for PredictWind to compute routes for you, it really needs to know the performance of your vessel. And so you have to either tell it the performance of your vessels, or it can actually measure the performance of your vessels. If you have a data hub on your vessel, then the instrumentation data gets transmitted to the AI at PredictWind, which will then analyze that data real time as you're moving your boat, and it'll learn how you sail your boat. And when it computes the optimum routes through the wind and the current and the waves, it will use that data to do so, giving you really nice, accurate routes that are specific to your vessel. So that's for the sailboat, for sailboat routing. There's also a powerboat specific model for those of you on powerboats that computes the minimum drag through the wind, current, and waves, which saves you fuel. So I have a powerboat. I use a powerboat mode. Those of you on sailboats will use the AI-generated polars to do the routing for your particular vessel. Again, the same information is used for departure planning. If you've never played with the departure planning tools on PredictWind, they're really super nice. It'll allow you over a period of days, it'll compute routes for you over a period of days and allow you to decide when best to leave in order to have the best conditions on your passage. It also provides hazard warnings along the route, slamming, excessive roll, dangerous situations. It uses very long range weather models in order to do this. And all of this is done on the server side with minimum results transferred over satellite to save airtime costs. All right, so I have a slide here. I think I'm going to do a live presentation too as well on this, because this is a really super cool feature. But in this slide, basically we wanted to do say you wanted to do passage from Annapolis, which is where it was when I did this slide, down to the Bahamas. You just put the source location and the destination location, and then you just tell it to go, and it'll basically take a look at all the weather and the wind and the performance parameters of your boat, and it'll compute routes for you based on those. So let me just yeah. So if you go to the sale planning section under the planning preferences, you'll see in the middle of the screen a button that says AI polars. So you give it a base polar so that it kind of has some idea of what your boat is, and then you go over there and you set AI polars. At that point, what Predict Wind do is if you send a tracking report to Predict Wind, it'll send sampled every minute performance characteristics of your boat, wind speed, wind direction, course of the ground, course of the speed through the water. And then it'll use those to customize the polars for you for when it computes this. So I have a video recording this, and then after the video, I'll do kind of a live little presentation on this feature because it's a super feature that you should all be aware of.
Hello, this is Lewis. Quick video demonstrating how to take routes that are created in the Predict Wind weather routing feature over to a charting program, in this case Aquamaps, and use those to navigate to your destination. So we are currently in Charleston, South Carolina, wanting to do an offshore passage to Jacksonville, Florida. So we use the Predict Wind departure planning tools and so forth to determine when it's best to leave. I'm assuming that we're going to leave now for the purposes of this demonstration. Since we're a powerboat, I'm going to go ahead and select the powerboat routing feature in Predict Wind to have it compute a route for us from our destination, from Charleston down to Jacksonville, and then show how we're going to put that into Aquamaps. And so first thing we do is go to select the function under powerboat routing, since we're powerboat, and set our start pin, which is going to be Charleston, and then our destination pin, which is going to be the channel entrance into Jacksonville. I'm assuming I'm leaving now, so I set the time and the date, which is now, and I hit the calculate button. So it'll go ahead now. Predict Wind will go ahead and create routes for us. We notice that the routes that it's computing for us for all the different models are pretty much exactly the same. I kind of like Spire these days, so there's the Spire route. I have my alerts telling me that indeed it's going to be uncomfortable for this route, but for purposes of this demonstration, I'll just show you that we'll use this route because we're leaving now, just so that you can see how the feature of this looks. All right, so there they are. I think I'll go ahead and use GFS for this particular model. There it is, for this particular route. There it is. To export that to Aquamaps, I hit tables. I hit export, and then I say export GPX file. I can then go through and select the app that I want to export it to, in this case Aquamaps. Aquamaps will come up. It'll say, ask me if I want to import the route. And there's the route. I can then go ahead and highlight the route. I can edit the route, add waypoints, delete waypoints, and so forth, just like I would with a normal route. I'm going to delete changes since I'm not going to make any of them. And I can go ahead and actually get information about the specific route. So here are the different legs.
So yeah, I won't go over the routing.
Hello, this is Lewis.
Won't go over the routing features that Aquamaps has, since I did that in the previous presentation. But let me just take this opportunity to very quickly go over here to Predict Wind, to my account at Predict Wind. So there's my account at Predict Wind. So I want to do the sailboat routing here, although I don't have a sailboat, just because I want to demonstrate that for you, because that's probably most of you have sailboats. And so again, you go to the website. Also, please, you can use this with either the standard account or with a professional account. The professional account is really nice because it has wave modeling, which will take the waves into consideration when doing the route planning. It also has high resolution currents and high resolution wind. So so you're going to get the best results if you have a professional account when you do this. And anyway, so we're going to come here to we're going to do a passage. Okay, so just zoom in here from Morehead City. Yeah, I'm not used to having my screen be so zoomed. So yeah, so we set our start pin, Morehead City. And then we come down here and we're going to the entrance into Nassau, Providence Island in the Bahamas. We can set the time that we're leaving. I'm just going to do that now. And we can then hit go. And what that will do is it'll use the polars that I have entered into the app to compute routes for me using the different wind models. And so we'll let that happen. So it's using the actual polars for the boat. This takes a lot longer to compute than it does for the powerboat model, because the powerboat model actually is a lot simpler than the sailboat model. All right, so here we are. So here are the different routes, right? So you can actually play these. Each one of these corresponds to a warning. So you got vertical acceleration, wind against current, roll situation here. So again, you get warnings along the route, vertical acceleration on the different issues. You can go ahead and play this. And so we are now using, this is the predict wind PWG model that is actually following. I can actually change that by, for example, if I wanted to follow the GFS model, I can go ahead and change that. You can actually click on each one. You can click on the little bubbles that you see right here. Just zoom again. Let me just zoom this in here, zoom this up. Yeah, you can click on the bubbles to have you move over to that particular route, but it'll show you based on time what the different wind conditions and situations are doing along that particular particular route. All right. Now, in addition to having the graphical display, you also have these tables which give you summaries of basically what the wind is going to do, what the wind direction is going to do, angle is going to do for the different models. You have a summary, you have the wind, and then basically here's the different wind predictions for the different models. So we're seeing gusts to 31 knots, probably not a good time to go to make that particular trip. And then again, information about the particular route and the different warnings that you can have along the way at the given time. And so again, a huge amount of information about that particular trip. And then finally, the export button over here will allow you to export in a number of different formats that you can use to import into your navigation. And so, for example, I can go ahead and export a GPX file, put it on an SD card, and put it on my Garmin, on my Navico display, or the Garmin display works as well, and then have that route in the Garmin display. So a really fantastic, powerful feature. And again, on the routing preferences for the sailing, you'll see we're sitting here. I got this. These are the polars. I got my AI polar selected. So that's using the instrumentation data from the hub. And again, these are the polars, the modified polars that are being computed and being used for your route planning and your weather, your route planning features. So anyway, so that's it. Let me just move over here and come back up here and finish up my presentation. So summing up, if the lights on your vessel come on, if the engine starts, if the toilet flushes, and more importantly, if the internet works, then all is well on my vessel. So that concludes my presentation. And so I'm open for questions.
Now, we have some questions, Louis, and let me
Yep.
read them out. And first of all, from Ken Kinport, he first asked how to be a Marine traffic station. I'd like to read them through, and then we'll go back to the first one. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay. The second question, he's running a bad GPS Bluetooth connection to an iPad. He will now also have a data hub, which he confirmed works. And he asked, can he run both simultaneously? The third question, the distance for over the horizon AIS targets set in predict, is it set in predict wind or in the data hub? Because you can get AIS information through predict wind. And then his last question. Let me see if I can get here. Takes me a second because I'm flipping between screens. How do you tell a data hub when you are motoring with a sailboat? So
Okay.
going back to the first question, how to be a marine traffic station.
All right, so yes, so lots of questions. So let me just go over here to Bob Etter's boat. Actually, I have a data hub that is probably gonna be, well, let me just get a screen here with the well, we just do it here. So this is, we're back on Bob's boat here. If I go to NMEA and I go to settings. Slowly, Bob, you need to do something about your Starlink link. All right, if I go here to Internet AIS. There's two features here. There's enable AIS to the internet, and there's an enable AIS from the internet. Enable AIS to the internet basically allows you to become a mobile station. And all you have to do is put a check mark on that and you become a mobile station. Now, what that does is it collects data from the N2K network and then sends it to Predict Wind. Predict Wind then turns around and sends that to 7 different aggregators, including marine traffic. So by just doing this, you automatically have your data included in marine traffic. However, as I mentioned before, you get special perks if you have your own marine traffic station. And so when you go to marine traffic and you log into marine traffic, one of the options in marine traffic is to create a station. And I can show you how to do that if you like, but it's not hard. You just log into your marine traffic account and there's a link for creating a station. Once you do that, marine traffic will assign to you an IP address and a port number. So if you come down here to custom and you click on that, you can go ahead and you can enter a custom IP address, which is going to be, 1.1.1.1, whatever your assigned marine traffic IP address is, and whatever port they give you. And then you just hit enter there and then save and apply. And at that point, the data hub will send the data not only to Predict Wind, but it'll also send it to your marine traffic station. And that will automatically elevate your marine traffic account to a professional account. All right. Does that answer your question? All right. So there was also a question on over the horizon AIS. And so to enable over the horizon AIS, you need 2 things. Under settings, you need to make sure that you enter your Predict Wind account information, and you just click on the link and enter that information. And then you select the range. So Bob's got his set up for 25 miles. You can go ahead and just enter anything up to 300 nautical miles. And so you can control that. So if you're coastal, you probably want to set that to something less than 300 miles because that's a lot of AIS targets. And so that'll, overwhelm your NFDs or your nav apps. If you're offshore and you're doing, watches, then, setting it more than 25 miles probably makes sense. Setting it out to 100, 150, maybe 200 miles, maybe 300 miles. It's up to you. Also, targets that are older than a specific age are not going to be displayed. That's really important because, if somebody goes and anchors at a marina and then turns off their AIS, that target is still on the internet. It's just really old. And so you can set the target age, which says, please do not send me any AIS targets that are older than a specific number of minutes from now. And then, again, there's information on how to tag. If you mark the AIS, then basically the sentences are set to Data Hub, allowing users to differentiate between the VHF queries. So yeah, so different options there. The only ones that you really probably need to be concerned with are the age. The default is 30, and then the distance. So again, this requires a professional account, and so you need to enter that into the Data Hub in order to be able to use that feature. All right, so I know that those 2 of the questions.
Okay, the second question he asked, and I did allow him to come up and talk if he would like, but we'll go through his questions first and we'll see what if this answers it. Second question, Kevin says, I am running a bad ELF GPS Bluetooth connection to an iPad. I now will also have a data hub, which I have confirmed works. Can I run both simultaneously?
So the answer to that question is, I don't know. That's a question for Aquamaps. I've never done that. My suspicion is that if you go to the settings here and you activate a connection via Wi-Fi, that will override the Bluetooth GPS. If you may have the Bluetooth GPS may show up under GPS data, I'm not sure, and you would put a check mark, but my guess is that it probably will not. But your vessel instrumentation, your GPSs that are coming, that are on your vessel, you probably have more than one that's on your N2K. Typically, every MFD has a GPS built into it. You've got an external GPS as well. You know, those all are going to be better than the Bluetooth GPS that you're using. The data hub will use all of those. So it'll use whatever GPSs are available on the N2K network for doing your navigation. So my recommendation is that you just use those. And then if you have a problem for some reason, you know, the data hub breaks or whatever, then of course you've got your Bluetooth GPS that you can use as a backup, but I would just put that away in a drawer and not bother with it.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. If bad data, you don't want it. The fourth question is, how do you tell the data hub when you are motoring with a sailboat? And then we have another question that came in from Adam Lowry, and I will also allow him to talk when we talk that question.
Right. So the answer is there's two ways. One of them is you set a speed in your settings on Predict Wind that says if I'm going 4 knots or 3 knots, I'm motoring, or I'm going to be motoring if I'm going at less than this speed. The other thing, of course, is that if your engine is interfaced into your N2K network, which many modern engines are, then the engine RPM and information is sent to Predict Wind as well. So they know you're motoring because the N2K network tells them. So you have a setting in Predict Wind, and you have this. The other thing to keep in mind is that the AI is really super smart. And so if you routinely start the engine when you hit 3 knots, it's going to learn that. And so it needs to know that when it's computing the routing. And so it will take that into consideration. So it's doing machine learning, and it's learning how you sail your boat, whether that means turning on your engine or not. And it'll use that information when computing your routes. The other thing to note also is that you enter a base polar, and then the AI modifies that base polar as it learns about your boat. So if for some reason data starts coming in that is way off of your base polar, then the AI will just choose to ignore it. So there's many different safeguards in place for taking care of this. Truthfully, I really don't know how all that works, because I'm the data hub guy, and all of that is done by the experts at the back end at Predict Wind, who are gathering this information and analyzing this information and then computing the routes from that information. We can ask support, but my understanding is, as I've shared here with you, that yeah, motoring is something that's definitely taken into consideration when creating the routes.
Thank you for that.
You.
Yeah, Kevin, do you have any other questions?
No, I don't. But I do, when you do the routing in a sailboat, it does allow you to put, if the boat is below X knots, then you motor, and you give that information. And
Right.
so that I guess you put the same in the data hub, and it will know when you're motoring.
Right,
I have an older 2006 boat, so my engine's not interfaced into the NEMEA 2000 yet, but I may choose to do that.
So the data hub makes no decisions on the data. The data hub just collects the data and sends it to the AI. All of the decisions are made with your account settings and the AI at Predict Wind.
Yeah. Okay. And I'll let you know, because I did have a situation last year coming into St. Augustine when I had a dropout of the AIS data on the multifunction display.
Hmm.
So I do run dual going in and out of ports just as a safety precaution. But I'm going to try it, going down the east coast of Florida in the next month, and I'll let you know how it works.
You're gonna love the over the horizon AIS. I mean, you can just imagine you're coming down the East Coast, you're going
No, I tell you, you got me. You don't need to tell me. I'm convinced.
Yeah, I mean, you can have a tanker coming at you on, in the Gulf Stream at 30 knots, and you're going 7 knots towards it, right? So you're converging.
No, I got you. You don't need. I've been,
Yeah.
sailing
other-
for 30 years, so this is amazing technology. But
The other thing
yeah,
that's really cool is that it's really a backup to your AIS receiver. Or if you don't even have an AIS receiver, vessels that don't have AIS receiver, I don't know who would have one, but if you don't have an AIS receiver, of course, this works as well. So if your AIS receiver breaks or your transmitter breaks, then of course you've got this option as well. And since your so it's I think it's a super feature. I think it's going to be really super
no,
popular.
it's a super feature, and I also, have a new VHF that has AIS too. So
Right.
I love having multiple inputs of information because it helps you stay safe. So thank you.
All right. Anyway, okay, Joan, any other questions?
Yes, Adam Lurie, and Adam, is that Lowry? Lori. He had a question. I have a data hub, but not Starlink or Iridium Go. Can I still use the data hub?
Oh, absolutely. So the data hub works fantastic, and you don't need to have a satellite communication. If you're for polars and tracking and all that, if you're out of internet range, then what happens is just stores that on an internal SD card. And as soon as you come into range, whether that plug your iPhone into a USB port in the back of it, or whether you connect to a marina Wi-Fi, then all that information gets sent to PredictWind. So the only difference is that if you have a satellite connection or you have LTE or cell phone connection on your boat that works while you're traveling, then all that information gets sent to PredictWind real time. But if not, then it's batch. And so, I take a look at, so there's many people that do this. Anyway, so there you go. Yeah. So the answer is yes, absolutely. You can use it without a satellite connection.
Terrific, because I'm just outfitting my boat now. I bought the data hub when it was on sale this winter, and eventually we'll have Starlink. So
yeah. Well, you should come to my presentation next week because we will be talking in detail about Starlink and your options with Starlink.
terrific. Do I have to sign up for it, or am I automatically signed up because I did this one?
No, you'll have to sign up for it separate, Adam.
Okay,
Yeah,
Great.
it's on the, I think you can see it on the SFCA news.
all right. I will go look for that.
And then we have several other people who hung in there. If anyone wants to talk, I could recognize everyone. It's getting close to, well, it's overtime, but if someone has something they'd want to discuss, this is the time. Just go to Q&A and ask a question, and I'll bring it up. But we'll give a couple minutes there. Louis, I want to thank you for this. It's a wonderful piece of hardware. I like the AIS over the horizon, like Kevin said. I like the ability, you can use the data hub with cell service. And I've got if there's a community, I don't have Starlink yet, but I have everything else but on our boat. But I really think that having your weather, especially with the upcoming weather that we know or think we may have this summer, I think you've got to get everything you can to know what's going on from NOAA, from PredictWind, compare and look, watch on the ground. And the thing that I really like about the information on the tracking maps, if you have a bunch of boats that you're going with, that you can look and see what they're doing, you can tell how their wind speeds are doing. It gives you also another idea if they plug their wind instruments into PredictWind of what other people are seeing at a certain point in time. But Bob Etter is here. We didn't let him speak, did we? But thank you very much, Bob. And Louis, thank you. And I have another question here. And that is Kevin saying thank you, very informative. And I'm going to say you are welcome.
You are welcome.
And with
I'm not
that,
sure, I'm not sure that you were actually successful in not letting me speak. I just didn't see the need. Lewis pretty much covered the topic pretty well. And I would echo everything he said, especially about the over the horizon AIS. I was actually asked by a cartographer, or someone that I know was asked by a cartographer, why we needed AIS that would be able to see that far. And we actually had to sit down and explain to them closing distances and speeds, and about, tankers that aren't going to turn for you, and being able to know that they're 40, 50 miles away really only gives you 5 or 10 minutes worth of time to make decisions. So the over the horizon AIS thing, I think, is just brilliant. And with that, I will mute myself.
Bob, thank you. And then Adam said thank you. So with that, and no more questions, I'll say thank you to all the participants. And this was live streamed. It will be, this video is stored on SSCA's YouTube site. Let me exit full screen.
Yeah, you might want to, take over the screen there, Joan.
And I will do. And basically, that's our Seven Seas Cruising Association screen. Can you see that, Lewis?
Yep, I can.
And that's Seven Seas Cruising Association. We actually pull and stream from this through our website, so it doesn't usually show everybody who's subscribed or anything. But there's 144 videos that you can see that are public, and there's about probably about 1,000 that are not public. But these are the ones you can see. And if you scroll down, you'll see live, and that will be Lewis's presentations, and then we'll package them, and they will become a product that you can also see we'll put slides and stuff in. But I want to thank you very much, everyone, and we will say good night.
Right. Thanks, everyone, and I'll see you next week, 7 o'clock.
All right.
So take care.
Same time, same place, 7 o'clock. And you can find the link on the SSCA website.